And Les Bond from Dorky's is supposed to be here too to be as a moderator, but he thought it was 4 o'clock tomorrow, so I just got off the cell phone with him, so he's going to be a little late. But anyhow, I guess just to get started, a brief bio. I grew up here in Tacoma area, namely the little redneck town of Fircrest, and always enjoyed repairing tube radios and electronic stuff. You know, every teacher at my elementary school would give me an old tube radio to take home and play with, and I was always just fascinated with electronic things. But the world of coin-op really started for me when I was about 9 years old, when a neighbor had an old Valley big time, I think it was about a 1953 bingo type pinball machine that they didn't want anymore, that hadn't worked, that was sitting in their garage, and offered it up for free. So ran home and got my little red wagon I still hung on to, and took the legs off and transported the body home about 3 doors down on my little wagon. And anyhow, that's what started the insanity for the most part, because I was just fascinated with the inner workings of that mechanical machine. And studied it, you know, through and through, and got it all up and running. And then I couldn't wait to get another one, but I wanted one with flippers on it. So picked up one of those and just kept on learning. And by the time I was maybe about 11 years old, I would start making trips. A neighbor of mine, for 20 bucks, would haul me up to Northwest Sales Company in Seattle, or Music Vend. And I'd buy a load of old, broken down electromechanical pinball machines and bring them home. And after school projects would be to go through, shop them out, and clean them all up, try to make them play really nice, and then just sell them to the people around town. At the same time, me and the school buddies, we spent a lot of time up at the local 7-Eleven store, and where Canteen Service had a pinball machine. In fact, Canteen Service had the contract for the whole city for the 7-Eleven stores. And there's always a dirty, broken down old machine. We'd be playing, the ball would get stuck. We're like, oh boy, okay, it's gonna be 3 or 4 days, maybe even a week until they come out on a service call. And I started heckling the store owner, just saying, hey, I could bring a pinball machine in here, and I'd be here every day to clean it, and there'd never be a light bulb burned out. And after a couple of years of begging and pleading, I think it was about when I turned 13 years old, I walked into the 7-Eleven one day, and the franchise owner, she said, are you serious about putting some machines in here? And I said, well, yes, yeah, I sure am. And she says, okay, I'll call Canteen, and when can you have one here? So that basically was the start of everything. I took over a couple other locations in that next year that were local, walking distance from me there, from where I grew up. Called it my bicycle route, basically. Also at the same time, I put out some snack vending machines, like down at the Fircrest Community Building and a couple other places, and was actually doing some candy and snack vending at the same time. But I really say I've done this for 35 years, and 35 years ago is when I turned 16, got a driver's license, and started hiring employees, and we became official at that point, I guess you could say. So, but yeah, and a life of coin-op ever since. And here's Les, here to join us from Dorky's, he's the owner-proprietor of Dorky's Arcade down here in Tacoma, doing a wonderful job, and our best display of a new national trend of the new Barcade scene that seems to be happening across the U.S.
So what was your first game that you actually had that you put out on route?
First game put out on route was a 1973 Bally Twin Win.
It's a twin win.
Yeah, that's about the lamest piece of crap, but you know. And then a Bally Circus rotated after that, so you know, hey, you know, just 12 years old, you know, not into the big leagues of the new machines. I think the first brand new machine I bought was in 1976, which was a couple years later, which was at Aladdin's Castle, and I bought that brand new in the box. That was back when a brand new Bally 2-player cost a whopping $1,195 for a 2-player. And a 4-player was $13.95. A single player was $10.95. So those were the good old days. But
how many machines did you accumulate before you decided that you have to take this seriously and make it into a real business, that when you were finally to the point?
When I turned 16, got the driver's license, that was it. I mean, it went from a half a dozen bicycle distance locations to, in about a year, built up to about 60 locations. In fact, we got all the 7-Elevens at that point, and the Circle K's, the Hoagie's Corners, a lot of convenience stores. And then a couple years after that, started picking up the bowling alleys. But I guess 35 years ago, when I turned 16, I could say, okay, we're of appreciable numbers now. I was up to a couple hundred machines, and
Wow.
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing coming from living at home and riding a bicycle to go fix and operate your games. That's pretty substantial. And now, what are some of your really big accounts that people may not know about?
Probably the best things going. We've always been heavy in large accounts like bowling alleys and amusement parks, skating. Probably the best things going right now are places like Wild Waves, like Dorky's with the retro arcade concept. Still, all the bowling alleys get a decent share, but although bowling is falling out of favor, just like roller skating. So really, the bowling centers used to be the premier arcade spots.
Bowling is on the up and coming again now too. I don't know if you've been following the trends.
So they say.
So they say.
And I get the Bowling Proprietors magazine too. Because
all the hipsters are bowling.
Their industry. I want to keep up with their industry and what's happening. And it's funny how all the ratings don't really come true. Just like in our industry trade publications, it's saying that there's a surge in pinball out there en route, but really only in select locations like Dorky's and in the right places. The average pinball machine sitting out there has reduced in income by about another 10% over the last 2 years. So we're not really seeing any resurgence in single placements of pinballs, in bars and bowling.
And then you have to deal with the maintenance issues that go with pinball.
Yes.
If anybody's played a Bill Masterman pinball machine, they take exceptional care of their machines. I remember way before I opened Dorky's, I was playing pinball at a bowling alley where one of the premier places in Tacoma was there's Narrows and Tower Lanes. You had 3 machines at Tower Lanes. And I was playing a game and there's something wrong with it. So I played another game and I called you way before I was operating, and while I was playing, somebody showed up and fixed the game.
Nice.
While I was playing. So that's what one of the reasons I contacted you to help out with Dorky's in the beginning.
Yeah, we've always prided ourselves with service. It's service all the way.
A broken pinball machine doesn't make any money.
No, broken any machine.
That's right.
So that's why we run service up till 1 or 2 in the morning, and still do today. We have all along. So
how many service techs do you have working for you right now?
We have an entire crew of about just a little over a dozen, but with our part-timers and everything. Actual technicians, I would say there's 4, going on 5 hardcore technicians. We got one of them right out here, Dan Pepin in the yellow shirt.
Dan.
Dan.
He's been down working on all the pinball machines down at Dorky's for the last week.
He started on with us actually as an attendant when he was much younger up at Wild Waves. It was so busy at Wild Waves, our service people would leave. We'd be just leaving the parking lot. They'd call in another service call. It didn't take long to realize we just needed to have people there on site all the time. Dan started there and was actually taking things apart and fixing things and going way beyond the call of being an arcade change maker and supervisor and cleaner. And we brought him onto the shop, and now he's started out moving machines, but he's getting very technical. So he'll be the next one moving up into the service ranks. But we've got several women, and all they do is process cash, run collection routes, and do that sort of thing, and fill the redemption type of equipment, which unfortunately redemption games are becoming extremely popular in the old traditional type of locations like bowling alleys, amusement parks, movie theaters. We might see, I hate to say it, on a brand new Stern pinball, let's say in a movie theater or a bowling center, you're lucky if you see $40, $50 a week out of it. You're just lucky. Where I remember years ago, like at Narrows Plaza, let's go back to the mid-'80s, we had a row of like 22 pinballs. The worst pinball would earn maybe 150 a week. That would go down for a rotation. It was time to replace that at 150 a week. Well, the other ones are all doing around 200, and whatever the best one doing $275, $300 a week.
Thinking of high-earning games, let's talk about Cyclone.
Oh yes, wonderful game.
You were talking about that. We've talked about this several times before. How many of those did you buy when that game came out?
I want to say we bought around 18. So I think between 17 and 20.
And what were some of the? You told me some of the issues were making sure that it would accept money.
Oh yes. Well, Cyclones, the cash boxes weren't deep enough back then.
And they would completely overflow.
They would actually completely fill. In between a week's collection, we'd actually get a service call, and yeah. And another game, Williams High Speed, same thing. That was an exciting game when it came out, but I got my feelings on that game too. I want to blame that game at ruining pinball too. It was the first game with automatic percentaging, but we picked up over 20 high-speed games, and actually our #1 earning pinball ever was high speed. We had a lot of them doing over $400 a week. Out of the 20 of them we picked up, we were getting $400 a week out of nearly half of them.
20 high speeds?
Astronomically, yes,
Wow.
yes. That was a game. But then too, at the same time, you'd walk in and you'd go into the same place and you'd see the same guys in the business suits at lunch playing pinball. That was a popular thing to do back then. The guys in the suits would play pinball, and after a couple months of high speed, hey, wait, this thing, I can't beat it anymore. They used to play because they paid, they paid their dues, they got good, they were able to win free games, maybe they could play for an hour free. They felt good about that. It gave an incentive to bring people to pinball. I noticed a lot of our players over the several years after high speed with automatic percentaging just stopped playing. They're like, the machine's outsmarting me now. And then we're getting now pinball revenue's declining, but the manufacturers are blaming that on other things maybe than automatic percentaging. So let's put all the widgets, let's put all the toys. That's when we started losing our casual pinball players, and it became more of a specialized market. So yeah, but I really think that high speed kind of changed everything with the automatic percentaging. So, and then I saw the same thing happen with Pinball 2000 when that came out. And we got one of the first ones. There for a lot of years, we would take all the beta test prototype games that Northwest Sales, American Games, or Music Men would get. We'd always get them out there first to do testing for the manufacturers. And yeah, just saw a lot of bad things starting to happen there, The revenue's declining, but with Pinball 2000, getting back to it, we went through our first prototype model. We're going through to set it up, and it was going to give you an extra ball at so many points. No replay. We're going through the whole program. Nothing in here for replay. A call to Williams. Oh, no, we took that out. It's wonderful. We're not going to have anybody winning any free games anymore. And this revolutionary new pinball is strong enough. People aren't going to care. They're going to be just fine with winning an extra ball. So I penned a big letter to Replay magazine, which is still the #1 trade industry magazine. Basically, it was not a nice letter, and I went back and talking about high speed and what I think that did, and that's why pinball got to where it is now. Now we're even taking away the replay, but anyhow, I raised probably a little too much hell with that one and raised some eyebrows, and was pretty verbal about things in my article. But miraculously, 3 weeks later, they came up with a chip and added the free game to the Pinball 2000.
So your letter worked.
Yeah, it worked. Oh, we got a lot of the operators were calling me up and saying we had no idea. Back then, too, a lot of operators would just set up a game and they would just put it out. And they weren't even aware that it wouldn't give replays, but...
Factory default settings.
Yes, but nowhere in the program to change that either. So that sucked. But
okay, so we talked about some of the best pinball games. What is your worst pinball machine nightmare that you absolutely regret buying? And we've talked about a couple games.
I hate to say this, but the sad truth of that is it's all the games that are the most collectible and are worth the big money right now. Like I remember we uncrated a Stern Orbiter 1 and put that thing out. There's one here on the floor today with that weird shaped moon playfield, put that thing out. I think we took it over to the Zippy Mart on South 38th Street, which is about the busiest convenience store spot in Tacoma, with about 20 games. Threw the Orbiter 1 in there, did nothing. So we immediately moved it. It wouldn't do anything anywhere. It didn't even last a year. And now it's a highly collectible game. Stern Iron Maiden comes to mind. I remember we unboxed that. We all laughed at it. Oh, what a joke. It was hard getting up the ramps. It was just a bad game. Put it out there, ran it for about a year, didn't do well, dumped it. Defender Pinball. You know, they only made several hundred of them, but because we were taking all the prototypes back then, we were ending up with all these rare games. But we would do that so we could find out first if a game was going to be strong, we could get our order in for 10 or 20 and hit the streets with them quickly. So we rolled the dice a lot, lost on a lot of them, but yeah. And then another similar thing, I was just reading online, there's a website, I don't know if everybody knows about arcadeheroes.com, but it's a great read. And they did an article there last week about rare video games regarding Midway and the games that never came to be. This about a week or two ago. And I was reading the article, and they got to this game, Inferno. And I'm thinking, wait, I remember that name. And I'm reading the article, and it did say they did actually make 5 of them. And I'm thinking back, oh my God, we had one of those 5. And I remember it was a dog. It was about Williams, 1981, 82, right there. We didn't even keep the thing out for a year. Brought it in, converted it. Of course, I had no memory what we converted it to. Turns out we converted it to a Bubble Bobble. I just found out a few days ago. I was just talking with Jerry Day, Candyman, and I was telling him the whole story. Damn, we had one of those rare 5 of Infernos that nobody knows where they ever went. And he goes, what? I've got your old one. And he said he took the old Bubble Bobble control panel overlay off to replace it and restore it. He does a really nice job with restoring his vintage games.
Yes, he does.
And he got underneath it, and here's this Inferno. What the hell is this? I've never heard of this. Ground it all off. So all the evidence is gone now. And put his new Bubble Bobble overlay on. But yeah, but it's just shocking now. It's looking back and thinking, my God, I wish we had had a 10,000-foot warehouse just to stack this garbage we about threw away. Because I mean, we literally threw a lot of it away even. But
he's told me some crazy stories about breaking down games and throwing away parts. Like, how many X-Men's did you destroy?
Oh, geez, tons.
Yeah.
And it's just logistics. We do the same thing today. You know, we're going to be looking back 30 years from now. Well, if I live that long, but we're still taking games to the dump. So.
But you do sell on eBay. I actually purchased my first video game from Bill on eBay a long time ago. Before I even dreamed of opening Dorky's, I bought a
Revolution X.
The Revolution X on eBay, and I got it for a steal. What I thought was a steal at the time. So, but he's always auctioning games off that you'd be surprised what he goes through. And I know you have a lot of parts laying around and everything too.
Oh yes, a lot of old parts and
Candyman also got to start working for you. He
Yes.
He used to sell parts
with
for
us,
you.
And
everything
we
too.
Taught him the ropes and everything, and
now he's one of the best vendors in the area too. So
yeah, he does a great job. But he's excellent video game restorations. Yes.
Yeah, you definitely are the best operator in Washington that I know of. I've never met anybody who has near the amount of games and the knowledge that this guy has on all the games.
Well, thank you. I've got him totally befuddled, but yeah.
So we talked a lot about pinball. Let's talk about some video games. And when you first started getting into video games, because you were there through the beginning of it all.
Right, because it was all pinball and then some black and white video games. I remember the Atari Le Mans in 1976, and whoa, these will do, 30, 40, 50 bucks a week. Although pinball back at that time, would do maybe electromechanical 100, 125 a week. Look at the return on investment, 125 a week on a $1,200 machine. Now $50 a week on a $5,000 machine. But anyhow, the black and white videos, they weren't earning what the pinballs were, but they were enough. And then Sprint 2 came, and wow, now that was the next step, another black and white game. And went through a lot of black and white games, but only would buy one or two, more so of the Sprint 2s and the things like that, but it really wasn't a video game business. But then this thing came along called Space Invaders, and that basically changed everything. I remember we picked up one, put it out. I want to say we just threw it went to the Goofy Goose Drive-In on 6th Avenue, our first Space
that's still
Invaders.
there.
Yes, still there today. But that thing, we went in to collect a couple weeks later, the coin box was overflowing. I go, what? This is a video game. And yeah, unbelievable. So we ended up with about 50 Space Invaders. But when everything got really nuts was a year later and Asteroids came out. And at that point, I mean, it was just so obvious that video games were becoming of age. We would take our box truck, go up to Music Vend. We could fit 18 Asteroid games inside that box truck and still close the door, barely. And we would buy 18 of them at a time, and with no locations. We were already doing all the 7-Elevens, the Hoagies, the Circle Ks, the main ones, but all the independent convenience stores, most of them didn't have video games yet. So we'd head out in the box truck and just go C-store to C-store and go in, oh, you don't have any video games. We got an Asteroids game right here on the truck we could set for you right now. 9 times out of 10, the location owner was out there watching us unload it, just salivating. So it was amazing. We could go around and pick up, over 15 new locations a day with those convenience stores. It's just too bad they were all short-lived. That was about a 6-year cycle, but and then it went back to the basics, back to the locations that had games all along. The taverns and pubs and bowling alleys and theaters and.
So after Asteroids, and then they started getting into the color games.
Yes, with
your Galaxian,
Defender and
Defender.
Galaxian. Galaxian was actually our first one. Great strides with that game. That was a great game. Then Defender and Pac-Man. And,
let's talk about Pac-Man, of course.
It was on at that point.
And Pac-Man is still living strong today. People still recognize Pac-Man no matter how old they are. Even if kids have never played Pac-Man, they know what Pac-Man is.
Right. They made like 90,000 of them, and then about 110,000 or so Mispacks. So highest produced games ever. So.
And then you get into the Battle Royale, the brand new.
Yeah, brand new Pac-Man Battle Royale, which is not for everywhere, we're finding, but in certain niche spots, like Dorky's, for example,
you got to wait in line to play
everybody relates.
that.
Yeah.
On a weekend, you can't even play the Battle Royale. You have to wait. Just like the old days. Games, people used to line up to play the games.
Nice to see that back again with something. So.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it shows the retro arcade concept is definitely something to keep an eye on in America right now, because they're opening up all over, and we're not hearing a lot of word of closures. It seems like a good, successful concept.
If you do it right and you take good care of your games and you have good people to work with, it's guaranteed to succeed. It's like not rocket science. It's like beer and video games. Okay.
Right. It's just getting enough of them in one place. We get some customers, well, we want to do, like Dorky's is doing, or we want to have retro games, and they think 2, 3, 4, 5 retro games is going to do it. It's not. You got to make a splash. It's go big or go home, and it seems like the retrocades that go big, they don't go home. So
you have to.
Yeah.
It's go big or go home, especially in this day and age. And the nostalgia factor is huge. And then there's people that are my age that we grew up in arcades. I didn't have much money to play because my parents thought it was stupid.
Right. Oh, yes. We were always stealing all the kids' money.
And now my parents are actually really proud of me that I made a living out of video games, which is funny. So, you go for people who are my age and their children, they don't know what an arcade is. All they know of an arcade is what Chuck E. Cheese is.
Yes, they think Redemption, which...
And Redemption's great. Skee-Ball is great. Everybody loves Skee-Ball, which we got to get one of those.
If you ever get room, but you better add on.
I need another location. Everything's been going to Redemption, so people want to bring their kids in to see what a real arcade is.
Yes.
And kids play pinball, too.
They do.
Some of the kids, they don't get the video games, and they'll play some video games and be like, but you get the kids on the pinball. I've seen them from under 5, like 3 years and
Which
4
is
years
great,
old.
because if there's any chance for pinball in the future, we have to introduce the young people to it,
Yes.
somehow, some way.
And that's the one thing you cannot do on your home video game
No,
system
no.
or your computer. You can play it, but it ain't the same.
It's not the same.
Never.
Which still surprises me. I can see with video games why they've died, but you go into the local bar and, well, we hardly have any pinball machines in bars anymore.
Because I took them all.
Yeah, well, you took them all, and you left us about a dozen for some other bars, but we still try to run one in every movie theater and bowling alley, but usually they're the lowest grossing pieces on the location, which is sad. Very sad for me, especially when my love of pinball is what basically got me started, and my love of pinball shows from when you walk in my front door at home. I got 38 restored machines at home.
I was going to ask you that, 38 machines.
And jukeboxes, vending machines. There's about 75 coin ops in total, all restored at home. So I still love the stuff after work, but yeah.
Getting the good stuff. Okay, so we talked about the beginning of those. So let's talk about a little bit of the downfall of when everything started like dropping off.
Yeah.
With
the video started crashing. It was about 84.
And that coincides with Nintendo coming out. Nintendo, I know, was a big part of the demise of video arcades. And what were some of the things that they tried to do to bring a resurgence of video games during that era?
They went fancy controls. Atari comes out with their Star Wars. It's let's do it with the controls. Let's do something they can't do at home. That helped a little bit, although it wasn't what it was, for those first few years. But it held on. It kept things going. And then the Laserdisc era came, and we were really excited about that. We picked up a Dragon's Lair, put it out. Oh my goodness, like $1,000 in a week. Let's buy 30 Dragon's Lairs. Well, not a good idea. Those Dragon's Lairs all went flat, after about 60 to 90 days. So
I actually have one in my storage unit causing issues because there was a big issue with the Laserdisc readers.
The Laserdisc players were unreliable, and they'd rock the machine and the thing would lock up, and
So then after that we started getting into the more fancy controls, like you said, like Daytona.
Yes,
and
the
that's
driving games.
90s.
And Daytona came out, I want to say about 1995 or so, 94, 95. One of our best grossing driving games of all time, that Sega Daytona. And the second best grossing video driver has to be the initial D series, which was actually a niche market game, more for the Asians and everything.
I was going to get into that, the Asian game thing that you did a lot with that too, bringing games from overseas.
Exactly.
And
we started importing and
everybody's favorite game, the DDR.
Yes, Dance Revolution. Oh my goodness. We brought, I would say, about 30 of those over from Japan, from about 2001, 2002. See, it was after the Daytona era. There really wasn't anything happening. Pinball was just getting flatter. Everything as far as American-made and released arcade games were just going flat out there. And so we started importing the DDRs. And then I'm getting offerings of all these other weird boxing machines and seeing these other Japanese games never released to America and think, I wonder how these would do here. And we accidentally found a niche market that way. And from about 2001 to about 2004, we had about 3 good years where niche market Japanese games were just bringing people totally back into the arcades again. And that went on for a while, and we had some big player groups. We'd do tournaments. But then in Japan, that started falling off, and that wore off. And ever since, video games have just basically been a struggle, and really signaling the need to move more towards redemption, which when we saw the video boom dying in the 80s, we actually were one of the first. There's 3 of us that we all rallied with the state of Washington and the legislature to legalize crane machines, because a crane machine with a stuffed animal in it was illegal in Washington up until 1988.
And you still need a gambling license.
And
for
you still need a
crane
gambling
machine today.
license to, yes, it's overregulated, but it was the only way we could get them into the state. Our state had a law against that sort of thing, unlike most other states. So we rallied and we lobbied, and 2 hard years, 3 of us. But a lot of work later, the Gambling Commission was set up to govern it, control it, and that was a big savior.
And right now, you have every Safeway around this area. I know you have machines.
Oh, yes, a crane machine and all the Safeways.
Every doorway when you go into a Safeway and you see a crane machine there.
And I miss the days, though, back when I didn't sign up to run Redemption. I signed up for that pole position that sat in that Safeway store that you used to walk into. So, yeah, it sure has changed.
And now you have redemption machines that count all the tickets, and it's like a giant vending machine inside, and you don't have to sit there and have somebody counting your tickets.
No, we've got redemption setups both with counters and manual counters and self-contained.
When did they start doing the vending machine style?
The vending
counters?
Machine style actually came along in 1995 with Smart Industries, came up with the first self-contained one. They built a total of 11 of them. They never really worked. They couldn't really make it work. But we picked up one of those in about the year 2000. It was sitting up at Music Ven, still new in the box. They couldn't sell it. And we reworked it and figured out how to make it work and put that thing out. And my God, really found some new hidden potential there in doing that. Then in the meantime, Benchmark came up with a reliable unit, and we started buying a bunch of those and moving more and more into the ticket game arena of things. But I tell you, it's heartbreaking. Walk into XYZ Arcade, used to have 50 video and pinball games, and now it's, half of that and half of it's redemption.
All bells and whistles and tickets.
Yes. And the other, the thing is, redemption out-earns traditional amusement by about 4 to 1.
I know you told me some of the earnings on redemption, and I'm like, my goodness.
That's where it's at now.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the face of the American arcade is changing forever now. And again, that's where the retro Barcade concept comes in, because none of that, and nice flashback to the way things used to be, and really the way I wish they still were. Redemption is labor intensive. So we got a couple gals, that's all they do is go around and fill machines, fill tickets, and that's all they do all week. So.
And paperwork.
And tons of paperwork for the state requirements. Oh my goodness.
It's not so bad with pinball and video games. You just have to count it and keep accurate records of it all, and there's no incoming product versus product going out.
Exactly. And nobody's stopping by to count your parts. Nobody comes in to inventory our Stern flipper coils like the Gambling Commission comes in to do inventory checks to make sure your inventory's all in line, down to every last little teddy bear. It's ridiculous. I mean, you got to have a count on every piece of merchandise, even if it's a little 17-cent piece of slum for 25 tickets.
Well, there's one good thing about the Gambling Commission that I know about. At Dorky's, and I know you've dealt with it a lot, people breaking into video games.
Oh, yes.
Crowbars and all kinds of stuff, and they wind up causing more damage than they actually get of money out of the machine. And then we've had it happen down at Dorky's, and the police will not do anything about it.
No.
But break into a redemption machine, and then what happens?
And then the Gambling Commission steps in. That's where we're lucky with the Gambling Commission controlling that. And we get a little theft ring going, and we're getting some break-ins. I think, come on, hit some redemption, please. Give the Gambling Commission a call. They send out a couple agents. They get things done.
Oh, yeah. So that's one good aspect of the Gambling Commission. They take care of business.
Yes, like a little Johnny, 15-year-old punk-ass kid can break into a redemption game, steal $10. It's a felony. So,
and it's not everybody goes and does it. We've had people, they go out of their way to go to different arcades, and they'll go like on a spree, and they'll have a driver and somebody running a distraction, and they have it all planned out, and they just go in. And Round Table Pizza was one that was getting hit a lot too.
Oh,
the same time as us. We were blown away when it happened. We couldn't believe that somebody would do that.
Oh yeah, you were insulted. Yeah.
I couldn't believe that. I'm like, we did all this work to provide these games to have fun for people, and then you're gonna just come in there and bust open the thing and then steal the coin box too. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Thanks for that, and the bent up front door, for your $10 or whatever. But actually, I got to say, the break-ins have decreased a lot. Back in the 90s, I would say, is when it peaked, and even in the 80s, when people knew But you'd see video games, the popularity of video game stories on the news all the time. The crooks knew there's a lot of money in those things. They stand in line to play those. And that's one benefit of the industry basically receding, is the thieves know there's not as much money in these machines anymore. So break-ins have actually decreased.
Well, thieves aren't smart, so that's why they break into stuff. But yeah, it's been interesting seeing it all go. Like I said, I was a hardcore player of arcades back in the day and remember all the really great games when they came out, but not having much money to play, like Ninja Turtles.
Oh, yes, that was a great game.
How many of those did you get when Ninja Turtles came out?
I'd say 18 to 20. Yeah, we bought pretty heavy on that one.
There was an era there with like Ninja Turtles and the big 4-player games, and everything was going to that, and then X-Men was the big 6-player.
X-Men was great, especially in the 6-player. Yep,
2 monitors, awesome. Twice the trouble.
Reminds me of Darius, too, back at the same time with the 2 monitors, although Darius didn't do well.
We need one of those.
X-Men did well.
I'll find one of those.
Find you one. Yeah. Back in those days, some of those games with the split monitors, that was kind of a new thing. There's little, tweaks and things that came along that would, carry the industry another 6 months, basically. And
well, another thing we didn't get to talk about.
But Gauntlet was the best 4-player. Well, we're on the 4-player subject. Gauntlet was the king. Yeah. Highest grossing in 1 week video game we've ever seen. Daytona was our best one. After we looked at it 10, 15 years later when we retired them, looked at what they made, Daytona killed everything. But on a per week basis, nothing beat Atari's original Gauntlet. I mean, they were only getting about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes on a quarter. I remember we had to set our difficulty settings to be easier because I felt guilty as to how fast it was swallowing the kids' quarters. But they'd be in line at all 4 joysticks. And we did like close to 2,000 a week on some Gauntlet games out there.
That's crazy.
Which is crazy, yeah. And especially back in that era when the price was still reasonable. A Gauntlet game, I want to say, was around $4,000 at the time. So you could actually pay for something quickly, something we hadn't seen since the Asteroids and Pac-Man days. Something that had been absent there for about a 5-year period. And
Gauntlet supposedly fell really hard then too. Once it stopped earning, it didn't earn at all then.
No. It was done in a year. Yeah.
One topic of games, and getting into the more modern video games, semi-modern, to the last hurrah of arcades, I sort of call it, the fighting games.
Oh yes.
The fighting games are crazy, and they still are kind of crazy today.
They are. There's still a group. There's a player community out there around fighting games.
And so what was like your first fighting game that you really noticed that these fighting game thing, like Street Fighter?
It's
Mortal Kombat.
Started, I'm trying to think, it was in 1984. We picked up a sample game of a game called Karate Champ.
And we have that.
And we put it down at the Daffodil Bowl, which wasn't really the strongest spot on the route, but I thought it'll give it a good, fair test. Karate Champ kicked ass. We were just in shock. Say, what? So, we bought a bunch of Karate Champs and Kung Fu Master, and it just kept on going from there. But the game that really put fighting games on the map had to be Street Fighter II. That game was just phenomenal.
And then they updated it every
Champion Edition.
Oh man, there were so many Street Fighters after that.
Yes, and then no Street Fighters forever. And then, it comes back to the import thing again. They came up with Street Fighter 4, but they were not going to release it to the United States. So we went ahead and imported some over from Japan, and my God, it was just like Street Fighter 2 again. We parked a pair of them over at Narrows Plaza Bowl, and here's a big crowd and lines every night to play Street Fighter again. But the only problem now, the base price on a Street Fighter setup was $16,000 for a fighting game. 16 grand, if you can believe that. That's how bad the manufacturers are gouging these days. And we've about broken even on our Street Fighters, even as well as it did. But we're happy just to get to a break-even point on them.
I don't want to bring up a sore subject, but how much was that update you put in it then, too?
Oh, the AE, I want to say, I believe those were $5,000.
For the update?
For the update,
and then they released it onto the systems?
Yes. They told us, I want to say it was about March or so that we were offered AE, or the industry was offered AE in Japan. So we quickly brought some over from Japan, put them in. But they were promising console release wouldn't be at least until October, November. Well, they lied. I think it was about June. We only got a few months with it. And the game fell flat on its face within a week after the introduction of the home console version. It was over. It was over in a minute. It was heartbreaking.
So yeah, bringing games over from overseas and whatnot. And you talked about your Initial D already. Let's talk about Initial D.
Initial D was awesome, except the updates were expensive. Although it was worth it, but it still cost $5,000 to update a twin of two machines of Initial D from like version 1 to version 2. But the game was strong enough in the right locations. You had to put it in an area with more of an Asian population. It just didn't work everywhere. But in the few select locations, we ran about a half a dozen twins of Initial D. Because again, we about our sixth one, and we started going to a non-Asian area. Oh, it's not hitting here, so
and
time
you
to
have
stop.
the newest.
Yeah, we've got the newest. Actually, we have Initial D5. They only offered up to Initial D4 here in America, and then with version 5, that wasn't offered to America, and it runs on the AllNet system in Japan with a special hub with an extra Lindbergh computer that goes in between the two cabinets. That's the actual server for the communication system. So we brought one of those over here, and we got it to run independently without being on the Japanese server network. Thank God, or the thing wasn't going to boot if we didn't figure that out. But it worked out. We were able to make it work. And so there's Initial D version 5, I think the newest one in America. And it's over at Narrows Bowl if anybody is still into Initial D.
And there's no other ones in Washington at all. I don't even know of anywhere.
No, not at all.
So that's always good.
That's something we've always tried to do too, is bring in the one-off weird stuff. We've always been that way, trying to be unique and set ourselves apart and offer something different that people can't just get everywhere.
You got to get Flip the Table. I told you that.
Yeah,
we need to get that one.
There's no doubt.
Oh man, that's everybody who has games. Who has a game collection. I'm sure in your collection of games, you have a game that Bill had in his collection at one point, or in his route.
Yep. We always tore our stickers off, so you're going to have to look for the telltale signs.
He's always a lot of machines I've bought over the years from other people. I've noticed the telltale signs of it being a Bill Masterman game. Like I just bought. From Christopher Walsh, I bought the Time Machine pinball.
Oh, cool.
And
yes.
We went through that, and I thought it was yours, and you looked at it, and you're like, this was mine.
Yep, we had 3 of those, if I remember correctly.
So, oh, yeah, I'm sure I have more games than I even know about that were yours at one point, but yes, a huge portion of the games that are up there probably were yours at one point.
Yes, we took a lot of them to the auction services around town, and unfortunately, we did take a lot to the dump, too. We just didn't have time to sell a lot of them. But our biggest time of selling, it was about 1983, probably late 83. All the asteroids Deluxe, the battle zones, the missile commands, all those were done. And we found ourselves with a surplus of about 400 video games. So we decided, well, what the hell do we do with them? Well, let's just sell them for $150 a piece and have a big parking lot sale. And before then, nobody had really been selling any of those to the public. So we tried a parking lot sale, set up about 200 of them out in our parking lot, ran a radio ad, and had a big sale, not knowing what would happen. We sold the whole parking lot in the first weekend. So 2 weekends later, we had another big parking lot sale, and we unloaded hundreds of games. That all, our problem is being an operator, you feel kind of bad because you don't have the time and wherewithal to offer service and everything after the sale, which is why we've always been kind of reluctant to sell things. We always say it's as is and prefer to sell them to collectors that can fix them. Like, if any of you seen our eBay auctions, well, we'll be really honest about it and tell you what it is, and often say it's better off in the hands of a collector that understands these things. So.
Yeah, you definitely
Yeah.
don't BS people on eBay. If you ever buy anything from on him eBay, what's your username?
Spool frame 8W3R.
Something like that.
Yes.
But I'm sure you'll come across some of his auctions in the future of stuff that he's selling.
We do a lot of, we call it back alley auctions. And we just explain we're a route operator. We don't have time to deal with people. But we've been taking a lot of games to the dump, but we want to offer them to local collectors instead of going to the dump. If anybody wants this, go for it. Here's what it is. Very impersonal. We put that in there too. You basically bid on the game. If you're the high bidder, pay us by PayPal. Let us know when you're going to pick it up. It'll be outside the back door in the alley behind the warehouse. Self-load.
Thinking of backyard sales and stuff, the last one I remember, I was there before I even really knew you, the silver coin warehouse.
Oh, yes.
That was a madhouse.
That was a
there.
madhouse. That was a
Everybody.
nutso sale.
When did you notice like it getting really collectible and these collectors starting to go like nuts over these games and people starting bidding wars and building home arcade collections? And
I'd say 6 to 8 years ago is when it really was getting noticeable. You know, before that, like back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, a family might want a pinball machine for their rec room, and they're usually happy with one. You know, now you turn off the lights and they breed.
yeah,
You know, yeah, you turn the lights back on in the morning. Holy crap! You know, I got a
that's
whole
why there's
basement
all these
full.
people here.
Yes, yes.
Because they love all these games and it's kind of hard to own one.
It is. It is.
And
Like
yeah,
I
you
say,
have 38 in your house, 38 pins.
38 just pinballs. And then we get old slot machines, tons of jukeboxes, vending machines. The wife counted them all, and she said there's 76 total coin-op machines in the house now. So,
And thinking of, you just brought up another topic I forgot to touch on because you're doing the vending and trying to deal with the downfall of arcade games. Let's talk about touch tunes.
oh, wonderful! Yes,
That was huge for you guys.
revolutionized the jukebox industry.
And you don't have to buy
Yep.
CDs and deal
No,
with changing out the
no.
CDs in the jukebox all the
No.
time.
And 45 RPM records. Oh, I remember that.
All the
Oh.
mechanical problems that can go wrong with them.
We'd go into service an account. The gal would be doing the collection, doing the paperwork. It would take me the whole time just to change all the damn records, and then your CDs. And
I don't know if anybody really knows this though, but with touch tunes, if you have a business and you get a touch tune jukebox, you can go past all the ASCAP music licensing fees. And if you own any kind of business and you have music playing, you have to pay a royalty to ASCAP. If not, you will be sued and they will shut you
Yep.
down and you have to pay royalties every year. But if you have a touch tune jukebox, it not only circumvents that fee, it allows people to choose what they want to play and make money too. Then they
Yes.
make really good money in some
they
locations.
do. It's an excellent business model. At first, I didn't believe in it at first. I'm thinking, you know, you guys are going to get 20% of the gross on this thing.
And they take money right off the top of
and
your
money right off the top too. So, and I was against that, but well, let's give it a try. Well, wait, these things are earning 4 times what a CD box is doing, and we don't have to change CDs anymore. Not such a bad thing after all. So it took off really quick.
A lot of the vending company or arcade gaming companies are going to that, like Golden Tee, and you have to pay a percentage right off the top.
Another, we call them third-party games is within the industry, and Golden Tee, that's not a good third-party game. That game doesn't make good money, unfortunately. So,
What's a good modern game that does make money like that then?
oh geez, as far as a bar game and a video game, honestly, nothing right now. There's nothing out there that you could feel comfortable at even grossing $100 a week with on a $7,000 or $8,000 machine.
Except
And then with Golden Tee, so many of those gross even $20, $30, $40, $50 a week. And then you've got your weekly, just your base fee for your connection charge, let alone all the percentage fees. We can go in there and collect a Golden Tee. IT gets all the money, and we might get $1 and the location gets $1.
yeah, because you have to pay a fee to connect to the server every
Yes.
time, and then you have to pay to upgrade your system every year.
Every year. It's
So
another
they're
800
really trying to
bucks
get-
per cabinet.
Yeah, each place is trying to get a really big cut of the pie,
Right.
rather than making a game and being like, "Here's your game, make money with it."
And it's all part of the problem with these video game makers. They're hardly selling any of the new video games anymore. And so they're making it up on the third-party fees and on parts. Oh, geez, we could go on forever about what's changed there. I mean, back in the days of classic games and a simple JAMA board, we're dealing now with these games where every manufacturer uses its own proprietary computer with its own proprietary video card. You can't go down the street and just pick up a $30 video card. They're using somebody's video card, but they take all the information off it, put their numbers on it, and charge you, like, I'm serious, $850 for a video card for any Sega game. It's just a ripoff. Now, fortunately, we've been able to uncrack a lot of this and figure out whose video card it really is and go get $30 and $40 cards. But it's been a lot of homework and a lot of work just to try to get around all that stuff. Because to buy an $800 video card for a game that's grossing, $30 a week is a little tough to stomach.
All right, so we got some new games too. I know you brought us one of the very first prototype games. You were talking about how you love prototype games.
Oh,
and you wanted
yes.
to see how it do. You know what game I'm talking about? What you brought me?
It could be, the Fruit Ninja was pretty
Oh,
early.
that makes stupid money still too. I
And
forgot about that.
the beer pong master.
That's what I was talking about, the beer pong.
Really getting away in bars. We were talking about video games, flat. Things like a beer pong game, punching bags. Punching bags, I think, is a must for every bar. Every bar in our route where they don't mind the banging noise that'll scare the crap out of you every time somebody slugs it. If they don't mind that, they'll allow a punching bag. Those things are phenomenal. They just keep going and going and going.
And you have to have special insurance for the punching bag games?
Fortunately, no. We checked with our insurance carrier, and we're with Farmers, actually, and we've got $3 million in total liability, and they said no problem. So, but then we're already paying an extra premium anyway from years ago when we ran more kiddie rides. So we're already, listed as a high-risk equipment operator.
You actually tried to do rides and carnival type things back in the day.
Geez, well, that's a story in itself that I wasn't even going to touch on. But yeah, I had a carnival back from 1979 to 1982. Masterman shows, and then I sold that out to Ralph Meeker. We were just breaking even. It was just going to be a summer thing because the game route was so slow during the summer. Well, let's buy some rides. So we assembled a carnival of about 8 major rides and 6 kiddie rides and about 10 joints. And joints meaning the slang word for the game booths, and of course a food trailer. And started picking up bookings and would play somewhere around town, Western Washington every weekend. We'd keep that carnival going, but that was a break even at best. And talk about employee problems.
Oh, carnies, oh boy.
If they weren't drunk or stoned, they didn't work for you. Complete nightmare. So
Think about that next time you go to a carnival and put your kid on a ride.
Yeah, I was glad to offload that, but Ralph Meeker took it off our hands, and then he got out of the business several years after picking up our carnival route. But he was a gentleman of the business. He really was. But
I want a carnival ride. I want my own personal carnival ride.
I know you do. I'm
I know
waiting for one in your backyard, and I drive by your house, and what the hell's that?
I know. Once I found out you can buy a carnival ride, and they're not that expensive.
No, they're pretty cheap for.
Yeah, for what they are. You could buy like a carousel for like $50,000.
The best buy is my favorite ride when we had the carnival. We're getting way off topic here, so I'll keep this brief. But we had a 1961, which is the year I was born, just coincidentally, but an Irely octopus ride.
Oh.
And that was back when they had a Cat gasoline engine running them. And we took the governor off of ours. And we gave some of the best octopus rides on our carnival route. I mean, we ran that son of a bitch at about double speed what you're supposed to. If the people didn't hang on, they were going to get ejected out of the tubs. I mean, and same thing with our Irely Rocco planes too. We took the governor off that little Cat motor and just, geez, that thing would just go like a bat out of hell.
Now you make me want to ride even more.
But see, I was young and dumb and still a kid myself, not thinking of safety as much as I should be. And I look back now and thinking, thank God I lived through that one without getting,
Well, that was the 70s, right? You said
murdered.
70s.
79 to 82.
Yeah, we didn't care about safety back then.
We didn't care. No. Even OSHA, they'd come out and inspect, and they were in and out of there in a half hour. They didn't care, you know.
Well, we're running short on time here. Is there anybody who has any questions for Bill? Any games that you'd like to ask a question about? Because he'll probably have a perverted name for any video game that's ever been made, too.
Hey, I'm trying to be good here today.
I know. This guy, I can't wait to be a dirty old man like this guy.
Well, if you have questions, please do step up to
There's
the
a
mic.
microphone right there.
It's being recorded and it won't get picked up
Yeah, I'll be
otherwise.
the first to ask a question. To both of you guys, first of all, Les, thank you very much for having Dorkies out there. For the longest time, last couple of years, of course, I'm a little on the slow side when it comes to hearing news. But yeah, I dig the place you have out there. It's very, very cool. I'm glad that we have something like that. For Bill, I have a question for you. I was here in the 70s for when there used to be a place called Players and Spectators. Do you remember that?
I sure do.
Yeah.
Yes.
I imagine that made you a little money there, and I would like to know what
Actually-
happened to the place.
Oh, I could give you the whole scoop on that. That actually wasn't one of our installations.
I see.
That was Steve Livingston over in Spokane that had Bumpers Amusement. And I have to think all the time he did that just to annoy me because he was pretty successful with it. But he came in and rented that whole building and set it up as a huge bar gaming arcade.
Yeah,
went
because I
for
remember
about
that was
3
the first
years.
bar arcade.
It really
thing.
was in
Yeah.
a huge scale, and it was nicely done.
Very well done.
I think they made money there for about 2 years. Into their third year, it was slipping, and he was starting to look. It was up for sale. He was trying to get out. An ice storm actually saved his butt financially and collapsed half of the roof. You know,
I remember
but
that,
more
yeah.
towards the back.
Yeah.
And the landlord didn't want to repair the building at the time. There was a big bunch of controversy, and that's when that all moved out. So then some of you from the eastern side might remember he took all that equipment and opened a Players and Spectators over in Spokane.
He did.
And but that was pretty short-lived too.
Yeah.
And,
Well, I figured you had a hand in that. There were so many games in that place.
oh, there was a ton.
You know,
Yes.
I mean, for the most part, I was kind of thinking, you know, Les is the only person in town that has something like that going on now. And
Right.
so it's really
right.
good to see that happening again.
Yeah,
Anyway,
really the
thanks to
highest
both of you.
piece counts are really at Dorky's and still over at the old B&I. You know.
B&I still got pinball, huh?
Actually,
got rid of all their
got,
pinball.
They got rid of the majority
Yeah.
of all the pinballs. Just too much maintenance, and they all got traded in. And that little arcade up in Port Townsend inherited most of that garbage. And
Thanks, guys.
hey, thank you.
Seth.
Where's the best place to buy a Fruit Ninja?
Oh man,
This guy's addicted to Fruit Ninja.
right now there's no good place. Brand new, $8,500. Plus tax, plus shipping. So yeah, it's just under 10 grand when you're all said and done. Game hasn't been out there long enough yet to show up on the used market. Give it a year, there'll be 5 grand in a year. I can guarantee it.
Okay, one more.
Sure.
There used to be an arcade. It was off of Riddell Road in Bremerton. Who owned that? It was called Family Fun Center back in the 80s to up to the early 90s.
Oh, okay. That was actually run by Bremerton Amusement. A private party rented the building, and Bremerton Amusement, they're now defunct too, just like Livingston's old place, Bumpers. They're long gone. But Bremerton Amusement set all the games, and they did a temporary arcade there for a while. And like a lot of those arcades back in that era, they just came and then they went with the crash. But yeah, but that was actually supplied by an operator, Bremerton Amusements, out of Bremerton. Ironically, there's no game operating companies stationed in the Bremerton area anymore. No. It's just us and I think 2 others that go over to the Bremerton area anymore. So.
Well, I will say I like Dorky so much I travel across the bridge all the time to go there, and I do like your games at the bowling alley over there at All-Star Lanes.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Seth. Was that it, or are we out of time now, or? We're out. Thank you
it.
so much for having us, everybody, and
Thank you.
come see us at Dorky's anytime.
Yep, keep arcading.